How did you end up going into live television? That was in New York.
Yeah. Actually, no, I did live television in Los Angeles. I didn't do it in New York.
Did you work for the Dumont Network?
Oh, wait a minute, I did. I forgot. You see, it's so long ago. I did work for Dumont. Thank God somebody has these records, because God knows I don't remember. But that's the fun part of my budding television career. I don't even remember what the show was, but I remember that I got to do a couple of shows, and I did some singing and dancing. And that in those days, the amount of space in which you had to dance, because they had one camera, and they didn't have the zoom lens, nothing remotely like that. So if you were going to dance, you literally had to dance in a space of about 4 feet by 4 feet square. That was it. That was the limit of where the camera frame was on either side, and in depth in terms of focus. And more than that, and I remember the song I sang, it was Shine Away Your Bluesies. And I was like a little newsboy with a little cap and little corduroy pants and tap shoes. And the makeup was extraordinary, because I suppose the tube itself, for technical reasons that I certainly couldn't explain, the lights had to be extremely bright. I mean, by the time you were through doing a half hour, your eyes were bright red and running, because the lights were so very strong. Because the lights were so very strong, your face was washed out, so then they would put orange or brick-colored makeup on you, a base, more darker than this, and not so bright. It was just very dark. And the lipstick was either purple or brown. And I cannot remember how hard it was. I can remember how hard it was to contain my joy at going on the subway with this bizarre makeup on, so that everyone could stare at me and say, she's special. Indeed, I was. I mean, can you imagine a person with a brown face, who is not normally brown, wearing purple lipstick? I went through every car in the subway, in the train. Just paraded up and down this damn train so that everyone could see how really special I was.
Did you work with any people who were known in the business at that time? It was so early.
No. And this was, I think they were doing isolated things. It wasn't somebody like, say, Major Bose from radio saying, and here she is, the cute little hot tamale from Puerto Rico, Rosita Alvario. No, I just remember doing several numbers on different occasions for this. They probably did little vignettes. And for whomever had television sets at that time, I really feel like a dinosaur, my God. I guess I am. I guess they would just record whoever was available who wanted to do stuff like that in different little vignettes, and they would use them as vignettes. Because I don't know, I don't think that there was, I certainly don't think there was 8-hour-a-day airtime. I can't believe that there was. And at this time, I was about 8 or 9, something like that. Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you saw television?
I remember the first time we got a television, which was probably the first time I saw it. I was about, I would guess I was about 13, and we used to watch the Milton Berle show. That was, and that's how it was known to us. It didn't have its regular name. What was the name of the company? The gasoline company that sponsored it?
Texaco.
It's Texaco Theater, I think is what it was, something like that. That was the Milton Berle show. And we used to make sandwiches and sit down in front of the set, and it was a picnic, and it was a real event. But I remember our first radio, which was very high, and they had consoles. And my mother immediately, because she sewed, made a chintz cover for it with a little opening, a little window. so everything was covered. When you were poor, you covered everything. So nothing would get stained or hurt. But it was so hilarious when I think of the chintz-covered radio, which, as I said, was tall. It was about 3 feet tall. A floor model with this little window, and all you saw was the dial and the buttons. It was a piece of chintz.
It was chintzy.
With a dial.
When you went to Hollywood, was it for television or movie work first?
It was for movie. I made my first movie in New York City, It was one of the very, very early independent films, produced and directed by a then very famous actor of his time, Paul Henreid, the man who lit the 2 cigarettes.
Yes.
For Bette Davis. That we did in New York was called So Young, So Bad.
And you played?
And it was, and I played a good girl, but it was about runaway schoolgirls who were sent to a reform school and are cruelly, cruelly treated.
Was it an ethnic role?
Oh, yes. Yes, I played a girl named Dolores, and a little Spanish girl, a Hispanic girl, who hangs herself at the end of the movie.
How did you end up at MGM? You were signed.
MGM came about because a talent scout actually saw me dancing in a dance school recital. In those days, talent scouts covered all of these kind of events, and they really did their work. And he saw me. His name, I'll never forget. His name was Dudley Wilkinson. He saw me and thought I had something, obviously, and went backstage and gave my mother his business card and said, the time isn't really right for Rosita just yet. I think at the time I was about 14, something like that, maybe 15. And he said, but I'll keep in touch with you, and when I think the time is right, perhaps we can do something. I didn't know what do something meant, but all I knew was that that was the studio of my dreams, because it was the musical studio. It was the great musical studio, and to this day remains so. And he would now and then call and say, just keeping in touch. And then about when I was 16 and I had already made my first film, which was So Young, So Bad, he called. And he said, L.B. Mayer of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer is coming into town, and I want Rosita to meet him. This was like a 2-year hiatus. And that's what I did. He said, come to the Waldorf Astoria, which was a very, very fancy hotel. It still is, but then it was like saying the Plaza. And go up to the penthouse suite. I didn't even know what a penthouse was. I didn't know what the Waldorf Astoria was, because when you were a ghetto kid, you rarely left the ghetto. So I didn't even know what Central Park looked like until I was, much older. And we went there. My mother took me and my then agent, because at that point I was doing little nightclub gigs as a singer-dancer. And we met the great man himself, Louis B. Mayer, who, based on what the talent scout had told him, signed me to a 7-year contract, never having seen me, but that's what talent scouts are for, especially in those days.